This is Eat, Sleep, Invest, the marketing podcast for real estate investors to get more deals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Eat, Sleep, and Invest. I'm your host, Bryan Driscoll, and I'm here with Greg Helbeck. What's going on, Greg?
Bryan, good morning. Hope you're having a great day so far. It's a wonderful day in California out here.
Yeah, you too, man. So, Greg, tell us a little bit about you. Like, what do you got going on?
Yeah, so I've been buying real estate for, since 2015 I started. So it's been, about 6.5 years. It was like late 2015. I was 20 years old when I started. I had no experience, no money, no track record. And I was living in New York at the time, and I wanted to be a full-time real estate investor. The whole idea of wholesaling was very appealing to me because when you don't have any money and you can make, $20,000, $30,000 a shot, it really stood out to me. So long story short, went to one of those like free boot camp seminar things, ended up buying like a $2,000 course that I split with my buddy 50-50 and went out there and started taking action and spun my wheels for like 9 months, got a deal, and then started doing more and more and more deals. And, about 2.5 years into my career, I actually started like doing real business and, turning this into an actual career. So this is the only thing I've ever done, Bryan. This is the only career I've had. I've been doing this since college. Like I started this in college. So this is my whole background. I think before this, I was like a lifeguard at a pool, So besides that, I've just been a real estate guy.
That's cool. How old are you?
27.
Okay. Yes. You're still young too. How many deals are you doing a year?
This year we'll probably do about 75. We started to amp it up, mid 2021, now going into 2022. We did I think we did 45 last year. So this year, my goal is to get to 75. We're on track right now. We had 8 so far in, July. So as the market's people are getting a little scared, I see a big opportunity to really, drill deep with a lot of marketing and a lot of investors are starting to drop out now. So this is a great time if you want to put your pedal to the metal to make some big strides.
Yeah, I see people are getting scared too. I don't know what's coming. Something's coming. I don't know what it's going to be. It's like, be prepared to take action because opportunity is going to fleet quickly.
It is, you know what? It's funny you say that because like there's a lot of people who are like doom and gloom. And I think there's definitely going to be a correction. I was watching a video last night, actually in the shower. That shows how much fun I have. And it was talking about a lot of these markets they were in a bubble. And the big problem is really the what people in a city make compared to the price of the home. And he's talking about how that is a major problem. Like, for example, in San Diego, it's pretty expensive here, but people make a lot of money in San Diego, right? But like there's this Salt Lake City, it's very expensive. People don't make as much money in Salt Lake City as they would in San Diego. So he says that's going to cause a correction. Either way, there's going to be opportunity for people to be successful. You just got to pivot,
That's what I see too. And it's like, you just be ready for it too. Like have your cash ready.
Yes.
You got to act quick.
I don't think Pittsburgh will get too beat up because it's a pretty steady Eddie market from what I've heard from other people.
Yeah, we grow slow and steady. Our properties aren't worth a ton either. They don't go up a lot, but they don't go down a lot, which is nice.
That's nice.
Except if you're flipping, you know what I mean? Like some people like those, the big gains on, now what are you doing? You flipping or wholesaling or both or what?
So our business is like 60% wholesales and then 40% either flips or rentals. The rentals in my area in New York are tough. So I had 9, then I sold 5, and now I got 4 left. And it's hard to make them cash flow because it's very expensive. So I really like the wholesale model, but there are deals where they just can't be wholesale. Like you just can't sell them or, the seller won't let you inside. So I try my best to do minimal work if I'm closing on a property. I will do a rehab. I have no problem doing it, but that just leads to more headaches and more potential issues to come up on properties that can be unnecessary. So step 1 is if we can wholesale it for a good fee, we'll do that. If it's a home run and we don't even want to try to wholesale it because we don't want to risk getting, snaked out of a deal, we'll just buy a property and put it back on the MLS. And then the third option is We'll take it to retail. We'll get the contractor in there and we'll start swinging the hammer, as they say.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's swinging the hammer sucks.
Horrible business. I mean, you could, I have friends who do it well, but I mean, it's just, there's so many points of failure that can happen that are out of your control if you're doing renovations. It's just like, rather stay away from that.
Yeah, it's stressful.
It is stressful. It's unnecessary.
Yeah. So you're saying if everyone's hearing you right, you live in California.
Yes.
And you invest in New York.
Primarily New York. Yeah. We do a little bit of a few other areas, but New York is our main like market. That's where I'm from. I know the area really well. I got a great network there. I started in that market. So like I started my career in that market, and it honestly gives me a little like taste of being home. Cause I don't live there anymore. And I go back every couple months, but it makes me still feel like a New Yorker, like when we're getting, you know, our properties done in some of these cities that I grew up in. So I've just been kind of sticking in my backyard, and I've done business in San Diego too. San Diego is a lot different than New York, but yeah, I mean, it's worked. And especially I think the big thing that other investors, that if they're listening, the more you know your area, whether you're virtual or not, it's going to be so much easier to convert leads too. Cause there's cities like, for example, in New York where, you know, certain neighborhoods are going to be trading in certain prices. And like, there's block by block towns. I'm sure Pittsburgh's similar too. Like there's one street that's really expensive. You can go to the next street and it's like a war zone. Right. So like there's all these little nuances where like, I just know from doing it for like 5 years. And it's an expensive market. So like, you know, we can make really big wholesale fees. Like we've done wholesale deals where they've made $100,000, right? Like not every time, but you know, when you have prices that are, you know, median house price in my area is probably like 550, you know, blended, like this is in like a few different counties. I mean, you can make some big profits. I mean, it's harder to get deals, but you can make some big fees because of those prices.
Yeah. That's solid too. Yeah. Cause it's the same amount of work.
Same thing. I did a deal in Delaware like a month ago, and it was a $3,000 assignment. And I did a deal like 3 weeks after that for like 40. And I think the Delaware deal actually required more work for about 1% of what that fee was. It's just funny how it all works out, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy. So
same thing.
So virtual, I talk to a ton of investors, like, cause we do the marketing, and a lot of people come to us, they're like, hey, I'm doing virtual. We get them a whole bunch of leads. 2 months later, they fizzle out. People can't have a hard time figuring out how to do virtual, how to close people on the phone, and what to do. Like, what kind of tips do you have there?
That's a great question. So if you're doing it virtually, you got to understand that there's 2 ways you can do it. So you could go like virtual into a market and focus on that one market. Like let's say someone lives in Texas, but they want to invest in Ohio, and they just pick Cleveland, Ohio. They're not going to be doing the entire state of Ohio. They're just doing Cleveland, Ohio. They live in Texas. They're going to be able to study that market and go really deep in that market. That's like option A, and I'll get into the answer in a minute. Option B is where people do this nationwide business, where basically they run web leads. They get Facebook and Google leads all over the country, and they just target the entire state or the entire USA. So then they're literally getting like at 2:00, they'll get a lead in Pennsylvania. Then 3:00, they'll have a lead in Florida. 4:00, they'll have a lead in California, and 5:00, they'll have a lead up in Oregon. So like, I don't do the second option. I do the first option. So I like to, if I'm going to do virtual deals for the most part, you know, we'll get stuff that trickles in, you know, in other areas, and we'll find a way to make money on it. But if you're starting out, your best bet is to pick a certain area. Like, let's say you're living in San Francisco, for example, you don't want to mess around over there because it's expensive and volatile. I would find a market that is not really expensive. So I would probably target an area where the median house price is below $300,000. I wouldn't go into a war zone area. I'd go into an area where it's probably under $300,000. And then the first thing I would do is I would spend some time before I spend marketing there. I would spend some time studying the neighborhoods and really finding out where's the bad area, where's the good area, you know, what is all the action, who's the top 10 realtors selling houses, who are investors buying there. I would start to build a little bit of like a virtual network up. And then in terms of like mechanics, if you're closing deals and stuff, I have found ever since COVID, Bryan, it is just as easy, if not easier, to just do these deals over the phone. I don't know. And especially like a lot of online leads, they're like a vacant house or they inherited it, or, it's a landlord property. Like, we've never really found the fact that we're virtual to be an actual problem. I mean, one out of maybe 10 properties, we're at a disadvantage because we're not physically there. But the other 9, it just makes it so much more efficient. We don't have to be running around the houses, spending 45 minutes in the car. So I've found that it really can make your business more efficient, and you can pretty much do the same thing, if not a better job, over the phone, and you can ultimately make more offers. And you could really, have a lot more, like, you can make more offers. Yeah, you're not going to convert as much, most likely, because if you're like belly to belly, there's that connection there. But if you're doing it virtually, let's say you pick one market and you're like, that market is just not what you thought it was like, you could just turn around and start doing it in another market in the matter of like a couple of weeks versus like having to like move across the country and like switch. So I've just found that if you really, work the phone well, and we can get into some specifics on that, it's not that much difficult than doing it in person. And sometimes it's even easier. And like, I'll tell you this is something that I've realized. There have been times where we got the deal over the phone over a local investor, because the local investor was like, I'm going to set an appointment up for Monday at 5. And they called us Friday at 2. And the seller didn't want to wait. And we're like, well, if we can give you a number over the phone that is, going to work for you, would you move forward? And they're like, absolutely. I don't want to wait. So it's kind of funny how, like, it doesn't happen every time, but you can actually win deals over the phone if you know the market and you know how much to offer, because sellers, a lot of the time, they don't want to wait. They want to just do it right away, especially online.
Yeah. And you're right there too, but there's a lot of gems in there. So that's what I see too. You're right on all the guys I see trying to do it national. I don't really know. I know 1 or 2 guys that are doing it, but most fail. But the guys that are crushing it do virtual, but it's local. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be your market, but the market. So exactly like what you're saying.
Got to know the
anybody
area.
Looking to get started, do what Greg's saying here. Don't go for the really cheap national leads and think you're going to do high volume. Like, focus on a place that you know.
Yeah. And I was just to put a bow on that. I mean, if you do the cheap leads national, yes, you're going to get a lot of traffic, most likely. But the selling, like, whether you're flipping them or if you're wholesaling them, you have to have your whole business is going to be a disposition business. And that, if you're getting leads, like what I've found is if you're getting leads in a very rural area, it's very tough to wholesale them, because a lot of the times you can just go on the MLS and find a deal that is the same as your crappy wholesale deal, and no one's going to want it. So I have a friend who does this. He does a lot of novations where he basically puts them on the MLS, and that works out for him. But yeah, you really want to stick to an area to start, especially when you're brand new. Once you're advanced, it's a little different because you have more skills and experience. But if you're a newbie, I would not be trying to go national. That's really going to throw you for a curve.
Funny you say that. The guys I know doing national are doing the novations also.
Yeah, that works. That definitely makes sense. I've looked into that, and it does make sense, but there's a whole nother can of worms that comes with that.
Yeah, it's a whole nother animal on that side.
Yeah.
Which works for people. Like, everything works and nothing works,
Right. It's funny.
Like, if you do something consistently, you're going to crush it.
100%. You're going to blow it out of the water. It's funny you say novations. I'm doing an novation right now in Connecticut, which is right in our market, basically. And it was pretty easy until yesterday when they wanted a $30,000 price reduction. So it's like, that business is great, but like, every exit strategy is going to have problems, right? So that's like the sexy, cool kid in town now is these novations. And they can be a little challenging, but you can definitely make money with them. But I digress.
Hey, now, whenever you're doing, you get a lead in New York, right? You're on the phone with them. Do you send them anything? Like, how do you build the credibility over the phone just from being like, this is Greg from San Diego?
Oh, I never tell. I tell them I'm on vacation in California.
Yeah.
So Brett, so I have an acquisitions manager, and he actually ironically doesn't even live in New York. He lives in Delaware, which is because you could do this anywhere. So he was living in New York. He moved to Delaware. So basically, and sometimes he gets busy, so I will help him out on the phone. So if the seller is like asking me like, oh, like, can you come see my house? Like, are you local? Like, if they come to my website, they would find out that we're local. But if they like call a mailer or whatever, if it's like a, realtor referral, I just say, listen, right now, I can't physically go to your house. I'm on vacation right now in California. I'm coming back, in a couple months. And I literally say that every time. They like chuckle. because it's true. And I say, listen, here's how we're going to do that. If you're happy about the price and everything, this whole conversation goes well and everything works out, we can loosely agree on a price via the phone. And then I can simply just send one of our colleagues out to the property to view the property. So we'll send one of my colleagues out to view the home, make sure that it checks out the way we expected. And we can just go right into contract and get this thing off your plate. So basically I set the stage that I'm not going to be showing up there. And, assuming you're happy. So it's all about with the seller. It's all about like kind of future pacing, how they want to feel, assuming you're happy about everything and you're comfortable at the end of this call. And we might get there, we might not. If we do agree on a price, I will send a colleague of mine out there. So I don't want to say like contractor. I don't want to say these words that might scare them. A colleague of mine, they'll simply view the property for 15 minutes, take a couple photos, and we can go right into contract and go from there. So I want to put them at ease. And I want to let them know that we have a very defined methodical process that we go through when we buy these homes. So they know exactly what to expect, especially when they're probably not going to ever physically meet me. I have sellers, Bryan, literally where I've never met them. Brett's never met them physically. And I'll send them a selfie when we close the deal. I'll be like in my office and I'll do like this. And I'll say, just by the way, I'm not a robot from, out of the country. I'm a real person. I just never met you. And then they always send me a selfie back. It's pretty funny how it all works out. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It works. I mean, you're doing some deals.
Yeah, it would definitely. I used to think it wasn't going to work when I first started doing it, at like a somewhat high level. I was like, I don't know, we might have a big, but like the more we started doing deals over the phone, the more I realized that it's actually more efficient. There's a good friend of mine in my local market. They're big. They do more volume than me. And they're buying 15 deals a month over the phone in the local market. And they were like dead set on doing appointments like 3-4 years ago. They were like, oh, we're only going to belly to belly. And they completely cut bait with that strategy, doing it all over the phone. And, a lot of big players are doing it. It's just more efficient in my opinion.
Yeah, it's weird too. I know, like anytime I'm trying to do something to make a change, what I'm imagining that's like is not what's reality. So it's like you're imagining all these things virtual. It's going to be like this and this and this. And then you start doing it. It's like, it's actually pretty simple. I get them on the phone. I see if I can do it. And
It's
you just go
so
through
simple.
the process.
I think it's so funny, man. I spend a lot of time, like, especially in the morning at night, just like thinking about stuff, just no phone, just hanging out, maybe with like a notepad. I really believe, like with conviction now, if someone has desire, and this is not a motivational like podcast, maybe it is, but I'm not like a motivational coach. If someone has a desire with the right information, they could basically get for free, like through podcasts and YouTube. They have to piece it together, but you can make money from anywhere in the country from your laptop and phone, like good money, like real good money if you want to quit your job because of the power of real estate and technology now, where like someone could start and within 4 to 6 months, they could be making money online, which sounds scammy, via wholesaling. With all the technology and stuff we have now, it's crazy with like the data and the software and like the lead gen. It's like, there's so much opportunity now to like, have a lifestyle, I guess. It's unbelievable. And it didn't exist even when I started in 15. There wasn't a lot of these softwares out there, and it was just a little bit different. It was a little bit more old school, even though that was only like 6 years ago. But it's just crazy to see how the business has changed. Like, even since I got back when I got started, I could send yellow letters out and I would get like a 6 and 7% response rate. Like crazy. That would never happen now, especially in San Diego. Like, it'd be a joke. You wouldn't get any calls.
Yeah, and you're right too. In today's world, you can live anywhere in the world,
Anywhere,
and make money. I know a guy. He's called. You know what a digital nomad is?
Oh yeah.
He's literally doesn't have a house. He travels from country to country to country, makes bank doing digital stuff, and he just travels and sees the world. He's still single.
It's amazing.
It's out there.
It's definitely out there. I have a friend who has VAs buying houses over the phone from the Philippines. Still don't understand that, but it works. So look at that.
Yeah, right. So there's tons of ways to do stuff. It's just you got to fail a ton of times and then figure out which one works and then sprint.
100%, man. You said it. You hit it right on the head.
So now you're doing this over the phone. Like, what kind of questions are you asking to see if the people are actually motivated or if they're just
Man,
fishing?
love that question. I could talk about this for 5 hours. So so there's a great book. I'll start with this. There's a great book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's probably the best negotiating book out there right now. There's a few. This is the best one. So he has a chapter on open-ended questions, which is basically questions that generally they start with what or how, but you ask them a question where they can't answer it yes or no, because when you ask an open-ended question, I almost threw up right there. Too much coffee. When you ask an open-ended question, they can't give you like a yes or a no, and it pulls a lot of information out of sellers. So for example, how long have you been thinking about selling this house for? That you can't say yes or no. You say, well, I got to do something soon because I have a foreclosure coming up. Oh, you have a foreclosure coming up? Yeah, I kind of waited a while and see what I'm doing. You're getting the information to come out. They're going to keep continuing on what they're saying. It's kind of they're going to build on what they said last. And, how long has that been an issue for? How long has the foreclosure been going on for? Oh, well, about 4 months, so those are the kind of questions we like to ask, open-ended questions. That's the first thing we like to do. We like to kind of start painting the picture with open-ended questions to get them to really tell us the truth on what's going on. That's like step one. And then step two is when you get open-ended questions and they start sharing really what's going on, the truth. And a lot of online leads, like shameless plug for what you guys do, the online leads, like they're already reaching out to you. Like you don't have to be like, hey, what's the address? Hey, are you selling? It's like, no, they're already telling you that they want to sell and you know where the property is. So it's actually a much easier conversation. Once you ask what's the reason you want to sell the house? How long have you been thinking about selling? What's been causing you to maybe consider selling this now? Just basic questions like that. That's going to pull the information out. And then the second type of questions we like to ask are commitment questions. Hey, if you're happy with everything at the end of this phone call, what would the next steps look like for you? Because a lot of investors, they try to act like used car salesmen and pressure these people into selling a house, which never works, by the way. And, we say, listen, but Bryan, assuming, we have this 20-minute phone call and, you're comfortable and you're really happy with everything, what do your next steps look like if this is a successful call? And we're looking for, well, if I'm comfortable with everything, I would want to get going on something immediately. And then we'll summarize and we'll say, well, it sounds like assuming everything's comfortable, you're comfortable with everything. It sounds like you'd be interested in moving forward, correct? At the end, assuming you're happy with everything, because we never want to pressure them into closing. We want to always make them feel like they're in control. And then by asking those questions, you can tell right away whether that's going to be a call you can probably wrap up pretty soon, or, hey, I'm not doing anything until I talk to my cousins. Oh, well, when are you going to speak to your cousins? Oh, I'm having a barbecue this weekend. And now this is going to be a prospect that's going to need to get followed up with probably over the course of a few weeks or a few months in order to get them to sell, because there's other influencers involved. There's some sort of thing they need to find out before they make a decision. But we like the open-ended questions to pull out the truth. And then we like to ask them commitment questions on, hey, assuming you're happy with everything, what are your next steps look like? Like, how do you imagine moving forward if this is something you actually want to do? And we want to kind of get them to tell us what their thoughts are before we make them an offer. Because a lot of times with sellers, and I've learned this just from talking to thousands of them, once they have your offer in hand, they have all they want from you and they don't have a reason to call you back, right? So you want to kind of delay that offer until you know when they're going to be making a decision. So then you can get some sort of a commitment from them, whether that's a yes or a no, or a next step, which is usually a next phone call, a date, a time, and then a specific outcome for that next call. I kind of rambled there. So you may have some follow-up questions on that. I could talk about this 5 hours.
And that's really good too. So anybody listening, go back and re-listen to that a few times. There's a bunch of gems there. It's especially even just asking those questions in the beginning, it helps, from my side of seeing things, it helps let the guard down. Because 100%. Most of the times you're talking to people and they're all defensive. I don't want to tell this guy anything because he's going to use all the information against me and I don't know what's happening. But if you get that out in the beginning, they know what you're doing. And then as a conversation.
Exactly. And we always tell them, listen, seller, we're not going to imagine the seller's name was seller. We're not going to pressure you to sell your house. We're only going to buy your house if you feel like we might be a good fit for you. And if at the end of this call, if you don't think this is the right option, we're not holding you to anything. We're going to give you free advice. Here's another one that I've learned. I learned this from a guy named Frank Kern, who's a big internet guy. Hey, listen, no matter what happens on this call, this is going to be valuable to you. We're either going to buy this house from you or we're going to give you some really helpful information so you can make the best decision for you and your family. So you're going to benefit tremendously just by being on this call. So now they know they're not going to get pressured. There's not going to be any games, and they have an incentive to stick around to that call. So they're either going to walk away with their house sold, or they're going to walk away with some great information. And honestly, Bryan, a lot of times we tell them, I don't think this is a good fit for you. And we're not doing the reverse psychology stuff. We're like, listen, I don't think this is going to be fit. I don't think you should sell your house for cash because you want 700 grand for the house. And you don't need to sell it right away. Your best bet is to put this house on the market with a real estate broker. And they're thrown off. They're like, what? Are you serious? Like, yeah, I mean, you want that price. I'd love to give you that price, but it seems to me like money's the most important thing for you, and convenience and certainty doesn't really matter. Well, that is kind of true. I never even thought about that. And now, you can, they're grateful. They're like, oh, wow. I appreciate that, Greg. That was, I didn't think that was going to be the case. Well, I'd love to buy it, but I don't think, it's going to make any sense for you to sell this house at a discount. And they're either going to confirm or correct you. Because if they're really motivated, they're going to say, well, I know that, but I don't want to wait. Okay. How come you don't want to wait? Well, you see what I'm saying? They're just going to keep talking and keep talking and keep talking until you either buy the house or get to the truth. The key on calls is to get to the truth. That's the only key. I had a lady yesterday. Brett was on a plane ride. So I took his calls. And she was like dead set on selling. This is actually in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. And the black swan came up. And she's like, well, before I make a decision and sell the house, I got to speak to 3 other investors. Bam, that showed up right before we were about to sign the contract. So now our next steps on that call is she told me that she wants to sell to me, but she's not going to do anything until she gets at least 3 quotes. And I said, well, what would happen because a lot of investors are scared to ask the tough questions. Hey, Mrs. Seller, what would happen if you get an offer that's higher than mine? Well, if it's not that far off, this is exactly what she said. Well, if it's not that far off, I'm going to sell to you either way because you're the first person to call me back. And I just feel like I can trust you more. So now I know either way, there's still a good chance we're going to get that house, but she's got to feel like she's in a situation mentally where she can make a good decision. Because the last thing you want to do is like pressure sellers to selling you and then have them call you the next day. Hey, I don't want to do this. And now all of a sudden, you thought you had a deal and now you're probably not going to buy the house.
Yeah, and that's big too, because some things you can pressure, like the high pressure works. Sales like this don't, because you have to give a relationship.
Does not work in this industry. No,
yeah, it's like 30 to 45 days before you.
Yeah, there's too much time. Exactly. It's too much time to bail. When you're in contract, it really means nothing until, well, in New York, it means something, but in other areas, it means absolutely nothing. They can cancel the contract and you really have no recourse.
Yeah. How about the new guy, the new investor? Because I know a lot of times they go in and, so say you got into the business, you didn't close your first deal, for 6 or 9 months, you're hungry. So some of these guys, it's like, I have to go and aggressive. I see it all the time. They're like, I'm like, no, you need to do what you're saying right there. Like ask the questions, chill out, try to find good fits. Like, what do you recommend for those new guys in the business to try to get deals down while they're stressed out?
Yeah. I mean, this is going to sound goofy, but you got to imagine you got $10 million in the bank and you don't need to buy their house. When you have that mindset where I don't need this house, even though you might need the house, it's going to allow you to have a better conversation because you imaginarily take the pressure off of you and you shine the light on the seller. And it's tough to do when you need to do a deal. It's not easy to like mentally get there, but you have to find a way to get to a headspace where you don't need to buy their house, right? You just don't need to buy their house. And it's going to allow the conversation to happen naturally. It's kind of like hitting on a girl or a guy, like depending on who's listening to this. If you really want to go on a date with them and you're like desperate and you kind of bring out the signs of desperation, the other person is going to want to run the other way. But if you make it seem like, hey, listen, I'd love to take you on a date, but if you don't want to go on a date with me, that's totally fine. You put the ball in their court and then they decide, hey, do I want to go on a date with this person? They can kind of sense like, oh, this person doesn't seem that desperate. I think I'll go on a date with them. It's the same thing with a seller. Like once a seller smells that you're desperate for the house, they run the other way. So if you're brand new, you got to imagine mentally that you don't need the house, even if you do. And it's a tough place to get to, but you got to get there. Or shameless plug, if you're in a market that, another investor operates in, if you're brand new, your best bet is to align with someone who knows what they're doing, bring them value generally by bringing them deals, and have the other investor help you close those deals. And if you've got to split the profits, you got to split the profits. You're 50% of something is way better than 100% of nothing. And if you can align with another investor who knows what they're doing, because every investor wants to do more deals. you're going to learn more by splitting profits in the beginning than you would on your own. And you're going to shorten a lot of those learning curves just by working with someone in your local market who really knows what they're doing. And you're going to ensure that those deals close. And you're going to ensure on the front end that you're buying those houses at the right numbers, because a lot of newbies don't know the numbers and they think it's a deal when it's 10% below retail. They tie it up and then they can't sell it because the numbers don't make sense.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Partnering up, because you can you can save 5 years of learning just by partnering up with someone who knows what they're doing and splitting a couple of deals with them.
I had a guy who still does deals with me to this day. He brought 2 deals to the table that were complicated wholesale deals. Like they were, in areas where, it's expensive. We split, this is like 3 weeks ago, we split like 120 grand or something like that on 2 deals. And he made more money splitting deals with me than he would have on his own, just because of our processes and stuff that we have in place. That doesn't happen every time, but it's, for him, he brought the deal. I took the whole thing to the finish line. He put 60 grand in his pocket and, had to go to the house like twice.
Yeah, that's solid. Good return.
Not bad. Not bad, right?
All right. So Greg, different topic. You read a lot of books, right?
I love reading books. I was just reading before we got on the show.
So now you read a book a week and post about it, don't you?
I do. I've been posting those book reviews for over 4 years now. Every single Saturday. I haven't missed a Saturday, knock on wood.
Yeah. And where do you post them? Facebook?
Facebook, Instagram. Yeah. And I don't think YouTube anymore. Maybe YouTube. I got to check. My assistant does it all, but she posts it mainly on Instagram and Facebook. I think she puts them on YouTube. If she doesn't, that's fine, because I don't have a lot of views on YouTube. But yeah, I really started with, I've been a reader for my whole career. I was someone that got started in 2015, actually before that a little bit. And one day I was like, you know what? I should take what I'm learning in these books, make a little short post, put a picture of the book out there, and maybe someone will buy the book and they'll get value from it. So started doing that, and been doing it ever since.
Yeah, I like it too, because you're always tossing up different books.
Yeah, I have a lot of people over the years be like, man, I got that book you posted on Facebook and it was really helpful. And I love those messages. It's like, took me like 5 minutes and maybe that book can change your life,
Yeah, books are really cool too. I even tell my kids and like different people, like, you can spend $10 and get someone's information they had to learn for their entire life.
Right? It's crazy. Crazy.
What are the top books you got on your top of your head right now, if people were going to go out and grab something?
If you're in the business of real estate, I would recommend Never Split the Difference. That's a great communication book. Phenomenal. I would read that book over and over and over. I still study that book to this day. I read chapters. I listen to the audiobook again. That's a great communication book. Another book I really like is called Principles by Ray Dalio. And there's actually 3 books within that book. And the middle book is called Life Principles. And it's really all about how to have an operating system in your life so you can get your goals. And he talks about his framework that he used. This guy's like a billionaire and he's got the biggest hedge fund in the world. And he walks through his life success formula on how he got to where he got to by using failure and pain and how to achieve goals in a systematic way. So that's a great book. And then another book, I'm just trying to think right off the cuff here. Another book I love is called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And it just talks about small repeated wins every day lead to massive success over time. And the key is you got to do it over time, because that's where the momentum happens. That's
good stuff. We'll have those links down in the show notes. Anyone who wants to grab those books. And Greg, do you have a site or anything where you list all the books like in order you like them, or do you have anything like that?
I should do a website. That's I got to add that to my list of things to do. But I just do it all on my Instagram and on my Facebook page. If you
put a website, I would bookmark that and come back to it.
gregsbooks.com, gregsfavoritebooks.com, or in today's day and age, gregsfavoritebooks.io. I know everyone likes doing the IO now, right?
Yeah, you
I don't even know what the hell
techie.
that means. What does that even mean? Is .io? Does that mean you're a tech guy, or what is that?
My business partner, Chad, thinks it looks like you're hip and it's a tech company. Me, I don't know. It's just a new extension,
.io. Yeah, I see that all over the place now.
Cool. Well, hey, Greg, is there anything else we wanted to cover? We kind of covered everything on a top level. Let me know if we're missing anything.
Yeah, I would say, the biggest thing that whether you're a new investor or you're an investor that's doing deals, the better you get at skills that matter, the more money you're going to put in your bank account. That's the first thing. So lead generation, conversion. We spoke about conversion on today's topic. And the third skill that not a lot of people talk about a lot is understanding what a deal is. If you get really good at underwriting and knowing what a deal is. And that's why we gave advice earlier. Like if you pick one area and get good at that area, you're going to understand what a deal is and what a deal isn't. And then you can use that skill to go into other areas over time. But if you just start getting leads in random places and you have no experience, you're really going to have a difficult time because you're not going to understand what makes a deal, right? And like, for example, like in Baltimore, you need to buy a deal at like 40 cents on the dollar minus repairs to wholesale it, because you can buy deals on the MLS in Baltimore at like 50, 55 cents on the dollar because it's a lower income area. But if you're in San Francisco or LA or San Diego or Miami or Seattle, like you can buy a property. Well, this market's a little different, but you used to be able to buy a property at 85 on the dollar, 85 cents on the dollar, and make 40 grand wholesaling it because someone was going to be buying it at 90 cents on the dollar. But it has to do with your market. So that's thing number one, is your skills. Thing number two is always working on your self-image and your beliefs, right? Like a lot of people might have skills, but mentally they don't think they can make the money they want to make. So you got to work. It's Ed Milet calls it your identity, right? Like you're only going to achieve what you really think you're worth. So the more you can work on your identity by, as Ed Milet says, keeping the promises you make to yourself, and, you know, being a person of integrity and hanging out with people who are doing what you want to do, you're going to slowly build the belief that you're actually worth the success you want to achieve. And I'm not a life coach, but I listen to Ed Milet. The guy's very successful, and I've implemented his ideas that he gives out for free. And it's helped me a lot grow, because you're never going to really exceed your self-image of your own internal self. So if you want to get to the next level, you got to find a way to always be increasing your self-image. It's like a thermostat on the wall. Like if you're set at 70 degrees and you want to achieve 80-degree success, until you get that thermostat to 80 degrees, you're always going to get somehow, some way, those 70-degree results. So you got to constantly be working on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point there, because I think a lot of people struggle with that either because of confidence or whatever. But yeah, you can't get where you don't think you can go. You need to think it first.
It's like a mental roadblock. You got to just keep working on that. And a big thing I do is just being a person who does what they say they're going to do to myself first, and then obviously with others as well, which is just as important, if not more important. If I say I'm going to come on a podcast with Bryan today, I'm coming on the podcast with Bryan. If I say I'm going to make my 5 calls, I'm going to make my 5 calls. Obviously in this business, you got to make more than 5 calls, but just doing the little things that I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to, eat steak and broccoli tonight. I'm not going to eat an ice cream sandwich. Like just little things like that add up over time.
Yeah. Good points. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably social media. If they go to my Instagram, Grego, GREGO_37, they send me a message. I'll get back to them, within a couple of days.
Cool. And you have a podcast also. What's the, how do they find that?
Yeah, they could go into all the podcast platforms, type in Pave the Way podcast. And I got great guests like Bryan on the show. We've been doing it for a while, and they could check us out on the Pave the Way podcast. We put out 1 new episode a week, and we've been doing it for 2.5 years.
Cool. What do you guys talk about?
Talk a lot about real estate, business, personal development. 95% is real estate. So I'm thinking about rebranding the show actually to a real estate related show. I bring on a lot of the top investors in the country that, we're friends with, and we kind of crack the code. We ask them questions on what they have done to get to success. So gotten a lot of good feedback on it over the years.
That's good stuff. Yeah. If you guys are investing, anyone out there listening, that's definitely Greg's a guy to listen to. And he has a good network of people that will give tips. Like they're actually not trying to sell you courses. They're actually trying to help you.
Exactly.
Cool, man.
Crack the code,
Right. Hey, well, thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure, man. This was a fun one. You asked some great questions.
Good stuff. Hey, well, everyone, thanks for listening. Until next time, go out there and crush some deals.